This is the warning. And the other day I sat down with my friend Katie Couric and tried to ask her a few questions, which is easier said than done. We didn't get too far into the interview before she was doing the asking and I was doing the answering. Here's one question she asked about John McCain and what I think he would think about Lindsey Graham and everything that's happening in America in 2024, 9 years into the Trump era.
Well, I have another question for you. I've been thinking a lot lately about John McCain. I was remembering when he was giving that speech and someone was heckling and saying things about Barack Obama when he was running. And basically, I know you remember this moment. You probably were there, Steve, where someone was yelling something about being a Muslim.
Yeah.
And Barack Obama and John McCain stopped and he said, "Don't do that." Something along these lines. You might even be able to quote him. "We have our policy differences. He's a good American, and please don't say that. Please don't do that."
He's an Arab. He is not. No.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Well, I think about my dad and my mom actually too. I think about so many people who are no longer with us and wonder, Tim, as I said, and wonder what would they say about this? Would John McCain, how would he fix this? What would he do?
Well, John McCain left a farewell letter to the country, and that is the last words, the last guidance we will ever have from John McCain, and everything you need to know about how to move through this period as an American is contained in that letter. John McCain was somebody who deeply believed in being an American. And one of the things that is most extraordinary about his life, that is one of the least known aspects of it, is that John was the chaplain among the POWs in captivity. And later, and this is true about Vietnam, it's one of the youngest countries in the world. The first generation of Vietnamese who have been born in peace in 1,000 years are the generation that were born after 1980. And John McCain, along with John Kerry and Pete Peterson, who was a Republican congressman and a POW, and Kerry and Clinton and McCain and Pete Peterson made peace. He made peace and reconciled with the people that tortured him in a long and bitter war. And if you go to Vietnam today, you will find a thriving country that reveres John McCain. And what McCain stood for was a belief in the project that Americans going back to the revolution called the cause. And he believed deeply in that cause. And he would be so offended, so deeply affronted by the cowardice. And the thing that really fired McCain up, he was an Irish guy, right? And there's an old saying, right? Is a private fight or can anyone join? Right? John McCain genuinely loved to fight. He loved to fight. He loved it. He loved it. and and he loved a good fight. It was one of the last things he said. We had an incredibly, as you know, right, the McCain team was a piranha tank, right? I mean, like legendary infighting. But the one thing that McCain there were no, there's and even today, except for Lindsey Graham, there's no McCain guys who got on board with any of this bullshit. The top ones anyway, right? Despite all the differences. And McCain's last words to, right, everybody walking out, he said, getting good fights for the rest of your life. And McCain, in that moment, what was happening was this. We were starting to hear the N-word when he said Barack Obama's name in a rally. And it was shocking in 2008. It was like hearing a gunshot. It was like standing there with my friend Mark Salter, and he said the word Barack Obama, and you heard N. Looked at him and went to the next stop, and you heard it again, and reporters heard it. I think we were shown some grace that we weren't indicted as a team. We were horrified by it. But we had this conversation with McCain, and the race was functionally over once you had the economy really blow up on September 15th. But we went to him and we said, every time you say the senator's name, hearing the N-word, which means we can't say his name. Functionally, you can't run a presidential campaign if you can't say your opponent's name. And really, we made a concession in that moment, a couple of us, that this was over. That Obama would be president. We knew that. But we absolutely were not going to do anything that incited that word being heard, being said at a moment of profound progress, of glory, really. That was upon the country. And so that conversation took place about an hour before that event. And it was an angry woman who is an archetype, really, of our COVID era, where everyone had that phones. And she took the microphone and said, Obama is a Muslim. And and McCain just reached out and he said, no, ma'am. No, ma'am. Barack Obama is a good man. He's my opponent. We just disagree on some things. And that world is gone now because there is no compromise possible with a fascist. There is no place to meet in the middle with the election denier and the person who wants to create mass detention camps and deportation camps.
So what would John McCain do today? What would he say today?
No. He would stand on a line and say, no, never, enough.
And
And
what would
he
he
would
say to Lindsey Graham, Steve?
shame, shame, shame on you. And Lindsey Graham, his ego would never have permitted that shaming. So if McCain were alive, Lindsey would be in line.
And do you think that John McCain could convince enough fair-minded Republicans who understood, the Liz Cheneys of the world, the Adam Kinzingers of the world, there's a number of other Republicans, not many, the Mitt Romneys of the world. Do you think he could keep what was formerly the Republican Party intact?
I don't think that John McCain would have been the organizing figure, the savior of this moment, but at the beginning of it, right? And it's 9 years on now, right? But going back 9 years,
Mhm.
before John got sick, I think very much that his defiance, his fighting spirit would have dissuaded people, particularly the men, right? The Josh Hawleys, right? The Ted Cruzes. The cravenness is so deep, the cowardice so immense. And I don't think anyone would want to have been called a coward by John McCain. And McCain was always restrained in the use of his heroism. He would never indict someone as a coward. But I think he would have in these circumstances. And I think it would have had an enormous deterrent effect in moments when it was badly needed that are long past. But if he came back tomorrow and surveyed where we stand, he would be astonished that these two are running together in a rematch at their ages. He'd be astonished by it. He would be deeply upset by the condition of the country. And he would be aghast at the lying. He would be aghast at it. And when Ronna McDaniel said what she said yesterday, I was on the team, I think John McCain might have had an aneurysm, which is probably a good place to leave it.